There is a photograph from Trooping the Colour on the 13th of June. Catherine, Princess of Wales, in pale blue, standing beside her 3 children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, in carefully coordinated outfits, waving from a carriage on the Mall. The photograph went around the world within hours. It was meant to be a celebration, a simple, dignified piece of royal pageantry. But that is not what the British public saw when they looked at it. What they saw was an absence. A space, a gap in the family that did not exist when Diana was alive, and that nobody on the working royal side seems particularly interested in closing. Prince Harry was not in that picture. Meghan was not in that picture. Archie and Lilibet were not in that picture. And according to royal sources speaking to multiple outlets in the past 48 hours, that absence is no accident. Catherine, Princess of Wales, has reportedly drawn a line that her husband William has been drawing for years, but that Catherine, the mother, has now made personal. She is protecting her children from Harry's chaos, from Meghan's exposure, from the whole Sussex machine that has, in 5 years, turned the royal family into a permanent international tabloid story. That is what I want to walk you through today. Because the British press is dancing around this with phrases like limited reunion and no agreed date. What is actually happening is much sharper than that. Catherine has, in private conversations that have begun leaking out, made it clear that George, Charlotte, and Louis will not be exposed to their Uncle Harry, their Aunt Meghan, or their cousins Archie and Lilibet on his upcoming July visit. The visit is happening. Harry is coming to Britain for an Invictus Games countdown event in Birmingham. But the door to Anmer Hall, the door to Kensington Palace, the door to George's school events, those doors are firmly shut. And the woman closing them is the one nobody expected. This is the story of how the Princess of Wales went from quiet diplomat to the family's most determined line of defense. And the price Harry is now paying for the book he wrote 2 years ago, the interview Meghan gave 4 years before that, and the chaos they have introduced into a household that is trying, against all odds, to raise 3 children in something resembling normality. Let's start with what we actually know. Because the story has been told in fragments across half a dozen outlets, and you have to put it together yourself to see the full picture. The Duke of Sussex is expected back in the United Kingdom in July of this year. The trip is officially tied to the Invictus Games countdown, with the main games taking place in Birmingham in 2027. The visit has been described in the British press as Harry's most significant return to British soil since the coronation in May 2023. There was speculation, fueled by Harry's own statements to the BBC, that this visit might pave the way for some kind of broader family reconciliation. He told the BBC, "I would love reconciliation with my family. There's no point continuing to fight anymore. Life is precious." That quote did the rounds for weeks. It was treated by some commentators as the opening of a door. But here is what the same outlets are now reporting, quietly, in the past fortnight. Harry will be coming alone. Meghan is not making the trip. The children are not making the trip. And the reunion he hoped for, the family reconciliation he spoke about to the BBC, is not actually scheduled to happen with the most important figures in the working royal family. There is no agreed meeting with William. There is no agreed meeting with Catherine. And by every available account, there is no plan for Archie and Lilibet, who have collectively visited the United Kingdom 4 times in their entire lives, to meet their cousins George, Charlotte, and Louis at all. None. The cousins, in the most basic sense, do not know each other. That fact alone, when you sit with it, is one of the most damaging pieces of evidence in the whole Sussex saga. Cousins who do not know each other, children of the same generation, of the same family, who could not pick each other out of a lineup. And the woman who has, by every available report, made the decision that this gap will not close on her watch is Catherine. Now, I want to bring in the authority side of this story, because this is not just my reading. This is being said on the record by people who actually know the family. Royal commentator Tom Bower, whose book Revenge in 2022 set the template for the modern Sussex critical narrative, has been telling anyone who will listen that the Prince and Princess of Wales' relationship with the Sussexes is finished. Not strained, not paused. Finished. He has been particularly direct on the question of the children. In multiple interviews this year, Bower has said that Catherine, in his words, will not let Meghan anywhere near her children. That is the phrase he has used, not a paraphrase, the actual phrase. And Bauer is not someone who throws those words around lightly. He has access to people inside the Kensington Palace operation that other journalists simply do not have. Then there is the Lady Colin Campbell side of this story. Lady C, as she is known, has been telling her followers for months that Catherine's protective instincts around her children have hardened significantly since the publication of Harry's memoir Spare in early 2023. Lady C has specifically pointed to one passage in that book, the passage where Harry described a physical altercation with his brother William inside Kensington Palace, as the moment Catherine decided the door was closed, permanently. According to Lady C's sources, Catherine took that passage personally, not just because it described her husband being assaulted in their own home, but because it was published, made into a paperback, translated into 30 languages, and put into the world for her children to one day read. That is the part nobody talks about enough. The book itself is the wound, not just because of what is in it, but because it exists, and it cannot be unwritten. Now stop and think about what Catherine is actually weighing here. She has 3 children. George is 12, Charlotte is 11, Louis is 8. They are old enough to read. They have access to the internet. They have classmates who have access to the internet. And in the world they are growing up in, every mistake their parents make, every family rift, every personal moment gets weaponized by whoever happens to be paying attention. The Sussex side of the family has demonstrated repeatedly over 5 years that nothing said in private with them stays private. The Oprah interview, the Netflix documentary, the Spare book, the endless podcast appearances, the court testimony, the brand-building memoirs. Everything that gets near the Sussex orbit eventually gets monetized, eventually gets sold, eventually becomes content. And Catherine has watched all of it, from a distance, with the calm composure that has become her trademark. And somewhere along the way, the calm composure has hardened into something more specific: determination. The determination that her children will not become content, will not become source material, will not become the next chapter in a Sussex memoir. That, according to royal sources speaking to outlets across the British and American press, is the actual reason there will be no reunion in July. There is one specific event that, more than any other, told the British public where Catherine's red line actually sits. It was Peter Phillips's wedding to Harriet Spurling earlier this year. Peter Phillips is the late Queen's eldest grandchild. He is Harry's cousin. They have known each other since childhood. They were close, by every available account, throughout their 20s. Peter was at Harry's wedding to Meghan in 2018. The relationship was, for years, one of the warmer family connections Harry actually had. Harry was not at Peter's wedding. William was there. Catherine was there. King Charles was there. Queen Camilla was there. Princess Beatrice was there. Princess Eugenie was there. The entire working royal family showed up. Harry, the cousin Peter had been close with for 30 years, was not invited, or was uninvited. The exact mechanism has been disputed by sources, but the outcome is not in dispute. Harry was not in the room, and the British press, when they wrote about it at the time, framed it as a personal decision by Peter Phillips. Royal sources let them frame it that way. But the more aggressive royal commentators, the Lady C's and the Tom Bowers of this world, have been quietly pointing to a different version of the story. In their version, the decision to keep Harry off the guest list was not Peter's alone. It was a collective decision by the senior working royals, including Catherine, who reportedly made it clear that she did not want her children, who were attending, to be in a setting where Harry would be present, and where photographers and family observers might catch a single awkward moment that would be turned into months of tabloid coverage. That is, if true, an extraordinarily revealing detail, because it suggests that the protective stance Catherine has taken around her children is not theoretical. It is operational. It is shaping decisions about who attends which family events in real time, right now, in 2026. And the person who is being categorically excluded, the person whose presence is being treated as inherently disruptive, is Harry. Now, I am being careful with these claims, because some of them come from sources whose track record is mixed. Lady C is a polarizing figure. Tom Bower has his own enemies in the press. The Royal Observer and the Daily Mail and the Express all have their own editorial agendas. None of this is gospel. But the pattern across the sources is consistent enough, and the absence of Harry from key family events is documented enough that the broader picture is hard to dispute. The working royal family is, week by week, organizing itself around the assumption that Harry will not be there, and that assumption is being driven, in significant part, by Catherine. This brings me to the Princess of Wales herself, because there is a version of this story that has been quietly told for years, where Catherine is the patient diplomat, the woman who quietly tries to keep the family together, the peacemaker, the bridge between William's temper and Charles's distance and Harry's exile. That version was, for a long time, the dominant one in the British press. Catherine the conciliator. Catherine who would, eventually, make the call that brought Harry home. That version of Catherine appears to no longer exist, or at least it appears to have been quietly retired in the past 2 years, since the Spare Book came out. The Catherine of 2026 is, by every account, a much harder version of the woman she used to be. She has been through cancer treatment. She has been through the longest absence from public life of any senior royal in living memory. She has come back, stood beside William through his own version of family hell, watched her father-in-law fight his own cancer battle, watched the institution she married into get systematically torn apart in international media by the two people who used to live inside it. And somewhere in that 2-year stretch, the diplomat became the protector. The bridge builder became the wall. That is the Catherine who has, this week, by every source available, made it clear that her children will not be exposed to Harry's chaos when he visits in July. The Catherine who has, according to multiple sources, told Charles directly that any meeting between Harry and George, Charlotte, or Louis is off the table. Not delayed. Off the table. The Catherine who has, in one of the most quietly devastating moves any senior royal has made in modern memory, simply removed her family from the possibility of being part of Harry's reconciliation narrative. If you want to keep up with this story as it develops, do me one small favor. Tap that subscribe button. It is free, it takes a second, and it is the one thing that lets us keep covering the royal family with the honesty the mainstream press will not. Right, back to the story. There is also the question of Anmer Hall, because Anmer Hall, the country home in Norfolk that William and Catherine have used as their primary family retreat for over a decade, is the physical manifestation of the protective architecture Catherine has built around her children. It sits on the Sandringham estate. King Charles owns the wider property. Anmer itself was given to William and Catherine as a wedding present by the late Queen in 2011. It has, since then, been the place George, Charlotte, and Louis have actually grown up. Their bedrooms are there. Their toys are there. Their dogs are there. The school holidays are spent there. The birthdays are spent there. The Christmases that are not at Sandringham proper are spent there. And the visitor list at Anmer Hall, by every available account, is one of the most carefully controlled in the entire British royal infrastructure. Even other senior family members are rarely there without specific invitation. The press has almost never photographed inside it. The staff who work there are vetted to a level normally reserved for high-security government installations. And the people who have actually crossed the threshold in the past 5 years can be counted on the fingers of one hand outside the immediate family. Harry, by every available report, has not been to Anmer Hall since 2019. Meghan has not been there since 2018, before the bridesmaid dress incident. Archie has been there once, as a baby. Lilibet has never been there at all. That is the operational reality of how completely the Sussex branch has been removed from the daily fabric of the working royal family. The children of the heir to the throne are growing up in a country house their cousins have never seen. Their cousins have never seen them either. The relationship that should, on paper, be the strongest bond of the next royal generation is, in practice, non-existent. And the reason it is non-existent is not distance. Distance can be bridged. Distance can be overcome with planes and visits and effort. The reason is that the parents of the children at Anmer Hall have decided, deliberately, that the parents of the children in Montecito are not the kind of people they want their children to know. That is a hard sentence, but it is, on the available evidence, the sentence the situation actually supports. Then there is the coronation. The coronation in May of 2023 was the one moment in the past 5 years where all of this could, theoretically, have been different. Harry was there. Meghan, notably, was not. The children were not. And the entire event was a study in the kind of careful family choreography Catherine has perfected. Harry was seated 3 rows behind William and Catherine. He was visible, but not central. He arrived at the Abbey alone, did not speak with William inside, did not appear in any of the post-ceremony family photographs, and was on a flight back to California within hours of the service ending. The whole appearance lasted, by some calculations, less than 12 hours on British soil. That trip was, in retrospect, the test case. The coronation was the moment when the family could have, with enough warmth and effort, begun the public process of repair. The opportunity was there. The world was watching. The press was, briefly, willing to receive a positive royal story. And what actually happened was that Harry was let in just far enough to be seen, and then, with maximum efficiency, sent home. That, by every account from people inside the operation, was Catherine's blueprint, the minimum viable appearance, the optical reconciliation that was not a real reconciliation, the handshake that was not a handshake. And the strategy has held with extraordinary discipline through every family event since. Harry comes when it is impossible for him not to come. He goes home as quickly as decency allows. He does not stay. He is not invited to stay. And the children of the working royal family, the children whose protection is now the center of gravity of the entire operation, are kept entirely apart from any of it. Because we have to talk about the Diana parallel. Because everything Catherine is doing right now, every protective instinct she is acting on, is shaped by what she watched happen to her mother-in-law. Catherine never met Princess Diana. Diana died in 1997. William and Catherine met in 2001 at the University of St. Andrews. But the shadow of Diana has hung over Catherine's entire adult life. She married into a family that lost a mother in the most public, most brutal, most cinematically tragic way imaginable. She married a man who was 12 when his mother was killed by the press attention his own family had failed to manage. She had her wedding day overshadowed by the comparison. She had every public appearance for the next decade measured against Diana's standards. She had 3 children whose grandmother was the most photographed woman of the 20th century. And she has, by every available account, decided that her children will not live the lives William and Harry lived as boys. That decision is the most important fact about Catherine, Princess of Wales. It explains the careful media management of her children's appearances. It explains the school in Berkshire rather than the school in central London. It explains the long absences, the protected birthdays, the limited press access. It explains the entire philosophy of how George, Charlotte, and Louis are being raised. Diana's children were raised in front of the cameras. Catherine's children are being raised behind walls. And now imagine you are Catherine. You are watching the same press that killed Diana, the same press that turned your husband's childhood into a circus, the same press that every time it gets a sniff of Sussex drama turns into a feeding frenzy that consumes every member of the family it can reach. You are watching that press. And you are being asked, by Harry, to please bring your children into the same room as Meghan, whose every conversation, by demonstrated track record, eventually finds its way into a memoir or a podcast or a Netflix series. What would you do? Catherine has made her decision, and the decision is no. That no is not personal in the way Harry's defenders sometimes frame it. It is not Catherine refusing to forgive. It is not Catherine holding a grudge. It is a structural decision about exposure, about risk, about the long-term protection of 3 small people who did not ask to be in this family and who deserve a chance, however slim, to grow up without becoming the next chapter in someone else's commercial story. There is also the history, the actual personal history between Catherine and Meghan, which the British press has touched on but rarely dwelled on properly. And the history matters because it explains why the protective stance Catherine is taking today did not come from nowhere. It was built, brick by brick, over the course of nearly a decade of accumulated personal grievance that was, until Spare came out, mostly kept private. Begin with the bridesmaid dress moment. In May of 2018, in the week leading up to the Sussex wedding, there was a fitting at Kensington Palace for Princess Charlotte's flower girl dress. According to the version of the story Meghan told Oprah in 2021, Catherine made Meghan cry during that fitting. According to the version William and Catherine's office has consistently maintained, and according to what Harry himself wrote in Spare in 2023, the dynamic was the reverse. Meghan made Catherine cry. It was Catherine who left the fitting in tears. It was Catherine who, by the wedding day, was still privately upset about how the exchange had gone. And it was Meghan who, in the Oprah interview 3 years later, told a global audience the opposite of what had actually happened. That single moment, that single deliberate inversion of the truth on the world's biggest interview platform, is the wound that has never healed inside Kensington Palace. Because it was not a misunderstanding. It was, by every account from the people in that room, a calculated reframing. And the reframing was done at the worst possible moment, when Catherine had no public voice with which to respond, when the institution had to remain silent for constitutional reasons, when the only available answer was the silence that lets a false story become the dominant story. Catherine, by every available report from people close to her, has never forgotten that, has never forgiven it. And the suspicion she has carried about Meghan since 2018, the basic operational distrust that any future interaction would be repurposed for someone else's benefit, has only hardened in the years since. Spare, in 2023, was the confirmation. The book contained details about private conversations, private spaces, private family moments that could only have come from Harry. And Harry could only have shared them with Meghan in the years following. Which meant, by simple logic, that anything Meghan had ever heard about Catherine had become potential book material, potential podcast material, potential Netflix material, potential interview material for whenever the Sussexes next needed a press cycle. That is the operational reality Catherine has been living with for 5 years. Every word she has ever spoken in the same room as Meghan was, in theory, content waiting to be deployed. Every facial expression, every disagreement, every small family moment, all of it potentially monetizable in the Sussex commercial machine. Now you ask yourself, given that operational reality, would you ever again expose your children to the same risk? Would you ever again share a Christmas, a birthday, a family lunch, a school event, a summer holiday with someone whose proven track record is to take private family material and turn it into international content? Catherine has answered the question. The answer is no. And the answer is also, as a corollary, that George, Charlotte, and Louis will not be put in a position where their own private family moments become future Sussex material either, because the children are the next generation. And the next generation, in Catherine's reading, is what is genuinely at stake here. Now let me bring in the William side of this, because the relationship between William and Harry has been the dominant frame for this story for years. William is the brother who will not speak. William is the brother who is categorical about Harry not returning. William is the difficult one, the hard line, the cold heart. But what the last 12 months of reporting has slowly revealed is that William is not actually the most decisive vote in this household. Catherine is. And Catherine's position, by every available account, is harder than William's. William, by some reports, has occasionally expressed a willingness to see his brother on his own, to have a private conversation, to, at minimum, sit in a room with Harry for a measured period of time. What William will not do is involve his children, his wife, or any member of his household in that conversation. And that line, the line about the children and the household, is Catherine's line, not William's. Catherine has drawn it. William is enforcing it. This is a fundamentally different reading of the dynamics than the one the British press has been giving you for years. The dynamic, as it actually exists in 2026, is that Catherine is the architect of the family's defensive posture, and William is the executor. The cold brother who will not speak to Harry is, in reality, the husband who is honoring his wife's protective stance. The institution that will not bend is, in reality, a mother who has decided her children are not negotiable. And this is why the title of this video is not hyperbole. Catherine is, in the most meaningful operational sense, rejecting Harry. Not out of cruelty, out of motherhood, out of the simple, immovable instinct that has driven every protective parent who has ever watched their family hurt by people they should have been able to trust. There is one more piece of this puzzle I want to address, because it has been bothering me for months, and the past few days of reporting have finally clarified it. The piece is Meghan herself. Because we have been talking about Catherine, about William, about Harry, about the children. The figure who has been quietly offstage in this story is the Duchess of Sussex, and her position in this entire dynamic is the most fascinating piece of the puzzle. Meghan has not been to the United Kingdom since September 2022. She has not attended any royal event since the late Queen's funeral. She has not been seen with Catherine, with William, with Charles, with Camilla, in any setting whatsoever in nearly 4 years. She has, by every available report, no plans to return to Britain at any point in 2026. The July trip Harry is making is explicitly his alone. That is, in its own way, also Catherine's victory. The Princess of Wales has, over the past 4 years, simply made it impossible for Meghan to function as a senior royal figure in the British context. Every time Meghan has tried to insert herself, through podcasts, through the Netflix series, through the As Ever brand launch, through commentary on the late Queen, Catherine has responded with silence. Composure. Continuation. The basic strategy of the long game. And the long game, as Catherine has played it, has worked. Meghan is now operating entirely from California. The British public has, by every available poll, formed a settled opinion of her that is unlikely to shift. And the working royal family has organized itself around the fundamental assumption that Meghan is not coming back. That assumption is now so deep that Harry himself, the man who married her and presumably knows her best, is making solo trips to the United Kingdom and leaving her behind. He is doing it because that is what the circumstances now require, and the circumstances now require it, in significant part, because Catherine has made them require it. That is, by any measure, an extraordinary piece of soft power. The Princess of Wales has, without raising her voice once, without giving a single interview about it, without writing a memoir, without releasing a Netflix series, restructured the entire family architecture around the assumption that Meghan is no longer part of it. And she has done it whilst battling cancer, raising 3 small children, and continuing to perform her own public duties. It is worth pausing on that for a moment, because the contrast with how Meghan has fought her own version of this war is genuinely striking. Meghan has, since 2020, given a global Oprah interview, produced a Netflix documentary, launched a podcast, written a children's book, started a candle and jam brand, and most recently appeared on the Tom Yama show with a tearful interview about her life. Every move has been loud. Every move has been a press cycle. Every move has been an attempt to reframe the narrative. Catherine has done none of these things. She has, on the contrary, given the fewest interviews of any senior royal of her generation, has written nothing, has produced nothing, has launched no brand, has built no commercial empire, has, in the most basic sense, simply continued doing the job she was given when she married William, with the quiet discipline of someone who knew the camera would eventually settle on whichever person was still standing. And the camera has, in the long run, settled on her. That is the lesson the Sussex side appears to have missed. Public opinion in Britain is not, in the end, won by the louder voice. It is won by the steadier presence. And Catherine has been steadier every year for 15 years. Through engagement, marriage, 3 pregnancies, public criticism, family scandals, her father-in-law's cancer, her own cancer, her sister-in-law's commercial expansion in California. Through all of it, Catherine has held. And the holding, the quiet refusal to be drawn into any of it, has built a public reservoir of trust that no Sussex production budget can buy. That reservoir is what is now being deployed, not in attack on the Sussexes, but in the quietest possible form of refusal. The refusal to engage, the refusal to be present, the refusal to allow her children to be present, the refusal simply to share the stage. And the British public, who watched all of this unfold over the past 4 years, has formed its own settled opinion. Polling now consistently shows Catherine as the most popular member of the royal family, while Meghan ranks at or near the bottom of the same polls. That gap is not closing. It is, by every available measure, widening. And the policy of quiet refusal Catherine has pursued is one of the largest contributors to why. Now I want to bring in the broader question, because this is not just about one family. The question is, what does this kind of stance from Catherine actually mean for the future of the monarchy? Because the working royal family is now effectively two camps: the reduced senior working royals, who are getting smaller every year, and the exile camp in Montecito, which is getting more isolated every year. And the bridge between those two camps, the conduit through which any reconciliation would have to flow, was supposed to be Catherine, supposed to be the warm, diplomatic Princess of Wales who would eventually broker the peace. That was the long-term assumption embedded in every royal watcher's planning for the next decade. That assumption is no longer holding. Catherine is not going to broker the peace. She has, on the available evidence, decided that peace is not worth the cost. And once she has decided that, the entire trajectory of the next 20 years of the monarchy looks fundamentally different from what most observers expected even a year ago. Harry is not coming back into the working royal family. Meghan is not coming back into the working royal family. Archie and Lilibet are not going to grow up alongside George, Charlotte, and Louis. The Sussex branch is now, structurally, a separate thing, a Californian celebrity operation that happens to share some genetic material with the British royal family, but is otherwise functioning as its own independent entity. That separation is happening. It is being engineered. And the chief engineer, the woman quietly making the architectural decisions, is the one most observers thought would do the opposite. I want to close with a specific image. Because the Trooping the Color photograph I started this video with is not just decorative. It is the whole story compressed into one frame. Catherine in pale blue, 3 children in matching outfits, Diana's exact shade of blue, Diana's exact aesthetic of family pageantry. Catherine has been doing this for years, the quiet visual reference to Diana, the careful echo of a mother she never met. And in 2026, more than ever, that echo is the message. The message is that this is what Diana would have done. This is the family Diana would have built. This is the inheritance Diana would have protected. And the corollary of that message, the message Catherine is not saying out loud but is clearly broadcasting in everything she does, is that the Sussex branch is not what Diana would have wanted. Diana would not have approved of the memoirs, of the Oprah interview, of the Netflix series, of the As Ever candle brand, of the slow commercialization of every personal relationship into content. Diana, whose own life was destroyed by the press she eventually learned to use, would have, in Catherine's reading, drawn a hard line against the kind of public family warfare the Sussexes have engaged in for half a decade. Catherine has drawn that line for her. Posthumously, retroactively, on Diana's behalf. And the line, as 2026 plays out, will hold. Harry is coming to Britain in July. He will go to Birmingham. He may, if Charles is well enough, see his father for the second private meeting in 2 years. He may attend an Invictus countdown event. He will get on a plane and go home to Montecito. And in the entire course of that visit, by every available report, he will not be in the same room as Catherine, William, George, Charlotte, or Louis. That is the new normal. And the woman who has built that new normal, the woman whose quiet, immovable mother's instinct has shaped the future of the entire institution, is not the woman the British press told you about 10 years ago. The patient diplomat, the smiling bridge, the peacekeeper. She is the wall. If you want to see the full backstory of how the working royal family arrived at this point, including the Peter Phillips wedding moment that exposed the actual family politics, and the spare book passages that hardened Catherine's stance into the position she now holds, the videos on your screen go further into the record than anyone else has. Click them when you are ready. And keep watching this channel. because this story is not finished. It has only just stopped pretending. The next 12 months will tell us whether the wall Catherine has built around her children holds, or whether the pressure from Charles, from the public, from Harry himself eventually softens it. My honest reading of the evidence is that the wall will hold. Catherine has, in everything she has done for the past 4 years, signaled that the protection of George, Charlotte, and Louis is the central organizing principle of her public life. Walls built on that principle do not come down for press cycles. They do not come down for memoirs. They do not come down for tearful interviews. They come down, if they come down at all, only for unambiguous, sustained, measurable change in the behavior of the people on the other side. And on the available evidence, that change is not coming from Montecito. Harry is welcome in Britain. Harry is welcome at Clarence House with his father. Harry is, with appropriate planning, welcome at Invictus events in Birmingham. What Harry is not welcome to do, on the available evidence, is bring his California life into the same room as the next generation of working royals. That door is shut. And the woman who shut it, the woman whose name almost never appears in the angrier coverage of this story, is the one who has, in the end, drawn the most consequential line of all.